and that is Hot Topics in the studio today. Hope you guys are doing all right. Oh man, I tell you, it's a lot going on out there, right? It is great weather. We are blessed. I was talking to a friend of mine over in the U.S. today, and of course, everybody is still with masks over there, and it just felt so, just so great to not be able to, have to wear masks. So we'll be counting our blessings today. Thank you so much for joining the show. 943-3700. You can always join us in the conversation for sure. We'd love for you to give us a call and weigh in on the conversation. Daily motivation for today. My father told me not to believe in authorities or celebrities, that society tends to imagine them as superhuman. It's good advice. People are snowed by celebrities all the time. In academia, people have this idea of achieving stardom, publishing in the best journals, being at the best university, writing on the hot topic everyone else writing about. But that's what my father told me not to do. He told me that you have to pursue things that sound right to you, not follow the crowd. And that's great advice from Robert Schiller, talking about his father, Benjamin Schiller. Kind of do what feels right to you, not what everybody else is doing. And another quote from Roxanne Roberts: most public persons do not market themselves as charismatic people. Most people try to present somewhat appealing persona. So it doesn't matter if they're good or if they're bad. They're never going to show that bad side. They're always going to want to show the good side. And that is something that we must all just be very mindful of, that people never really present their true side, and to walk carefully, make your own judgments, and make sure that you are making your choices based on your choices, your heart, not what everybody else is doing. With that said, we will start the show today. In the studio, we do have Mario Rankin. I want to say good afternoon to Mario. Mario, how are you doing this afternoon?
Pretty good. Good afternoon to your loyal listeners.
Good afternoon to you, and thank you for joining us. Always some hot topic going on with you, obviously, from a political standpoint, as well as just what's happening in our country, right? And we're supposed to be joined by Miss Rosanna at some point, so hopefully she'll get here and we can all just chat. So, what's on your mind this afternoon, Mario?
Well, obviously it's the things that we can't get off our mind,
Right.
and those things are one, cost of living, of course, priority number one, and other things that I think is extremely important to the democratic process we begin in Ireland, and I think it's our duty as electors, individuals who have taken time to become registered to vote and participate within our democracy, that we always emphasize the true meaning of democracy. And I think that in the last 2 years, where the registration rules of this country has taken significant, certainly that project is not relevant now. However, a referendum was triggered, um, which was followed by the constitutional requirements. And I think that it's of the utmost importance that we have this referendum on election day on May 26th, that we have an opportunity to maintain the integrity of the Constitution by having this referendum so that we can vote on this project. Whether or not our tourism product is up and running now, someday it will be. And we don't want to leave anything to question. So those are the two topics that I think are at the forefront for me, um, that we need to continue to create awareness and remind people of some of the fundamental issues that affect our everyday lives. To keep up with the cost of living pace. So
Right.
We need to talk about these issues.
All right. So which one are we going to start with this
Well,
afternoon?
we can start with the cost of living because
All right.
I
Yeah.
think that's on the minds of everybody.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've seen now where the government has made announcements. They're going to extend the stimulus to the persons in the water sports industry and the tourism industry, which I think is the right thing to do. Obviously, when we grant these things, that there's a lot of work behind the scenes that goes on that that the public is not really privy to. But I think ultimately, if the government sees a path where they can contribute or continue to contribute, sorry, with some stimuluses to try to help these families that rely on tourism who are obviously struggling at this particular point. To do so, I think that it's important that we redirect our resources to helping our people. One of the things that I am worried about is that there's no perfect system, there's no perfect methodology. So I believe that there will be some abuses within that platform, and we can't weed them all out, but we can do our best. So I think it's paramount that we focus in on the issues that affect us on a day-to-day basis, the products that are consumed by compulsory as opposed to by choice. I mean, I could choose whether I buy $100 pair of shoes
Right.
versus a $50 pair of shoes or a $20 pair of shoes, whatever. But I cannot choose what energy I burn and whether I eat or not. These are the things that I have to participate in by compulsory. And unfortunately, these are also the items that are the key factors in the cost of living, and driving cost of living. And then
Right.
we need to focus in on these things. And there's a large block of the business community who don't necessarily agree with everything people say when we say we need lower prices on certain products, because
Right.
we know that our consumer base is quite smaller than other jurisdictions because of the population. But again, we also see that when it comes to energy, Cayman is one of the largest consumers per capita in the world. So,
Right.
and that's been like that since 1979. So this is not something new, and I think that we were very well aware of this fact from a very long time ago. We just chose to do nothing meaningful to kind of curb or shape how we should be consuming energy, and that's unfortunate.
Right, absolutely. And I think when you you're living in a situation where everybody is paying kind of the same prices at the stores, and you're
Mhm.
paying the same prices for energy, for gas at the gas stations, at the pumps, but everybody is not across the board um, you know, making the same money or having the same kind of opportunities for
Right.
the same money, which is normal, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. There's going to be rich people. There's going to be, poor people. There's going to be blue collar people, white collar people. There will always be in any society. So
Right.
there's not anything being said about that. It's just recognizing that there has to be some type of opportunity for your person that is not within a particular uh, income bracket, that
Right.
they're able to survive and live a decent life. So
Well,
I think that's the cost of living thing that we are talking about.
correct. And to your point, and to extend a bit on what you said in terms of for lack of a better term, the category of individuals' earnings. What I'll say to that is that one, because we have a small population, that's a plus,
Right.
and two, we have the ability to legislate certain laws that manage how we consume any product. Now, I would never get into the discussion about price control across the board. Obviously,
Right.
that's not feasible, and that wouldn't be sustainable for certain businesses. But when we look at the categories in which you just mentioned, so if I'm at the wheelhouse and I'm getting ready to create a strategy that is gonna target the cost of living and how we create a system that could be sustainable for all. The first category that I look at is the man at the bottom. So understand this. Once we fix it for the guy on the bottom, then obviously everybody above him is okay.
It's going to be fine.
It's going to be fine.
Right.
So I think that we've taken the wrong approach. I'm not saying that the things that have been done in the past and that are currently being done to ensure that the industries that we rely on to generate GDP shouldn't be looked after. I'm saying that we can't only look after those things while assuming that the trickle down effect will eventually reach the people that we have ignored and the people that we have chose to disregard and sidestep simply because if we approve a project to build a 200-room hotel, and I'm speaking hypothetically, people, we assume that because we gave an approval to build a 200-room hotel, that there is a huge variation of jobs that will stem from that. And we assume that that money will trickle into the pockets of the individual that we haven't created any policies to help be sustainable. And I think that that's where we've gone wrong because every single proposal from a large developer in the past 30 years, and I say that because I got out of school in 1990. That happened to be 30 years ago. So when I became a young adult, I started to pay close attention to my surroundings. So in the last 30 years, every single major development project came with the promise of upward mobility for individuals and jobs and the spin-offs and all of these different things. And yet today, 30 years later, we don't seem to see the effects of that, the rewards of that, the benefits from that. We don't see the Caymanians that they told us 30 years ago would benefit from these glamorous projects, which may have brought some benefit to our jurisdiction in terms of tourism. I get that. I don't have no problem with the value that that brings. What I have a problem with is that we bought into the idea that Caymanians would benefit from the residual effects of it happening at that particular time, but there's no long-term benefits for Caymanians because we don't see it today.
Right.
It's not there. It's non-existent. So I'm not speaking from the hip saying, oh well, this is what they said. No, 30 years ago when they were redeveloping all of these big hotels and condominiums and all these other projects and saying it was going to be great for Cayman economy and people were going to get jobs and we're going to have benefit from it, I don't see it today. It's not there.
Okay, so what do you think then? What could have been done differently that would allow us to see something different?
Well, the key thing, I think at one point we had some really good legislation. Just needed some amendments and some development. I think that the key thing is that we moved away from Caymanians first. We moved away from making sure that whatever it was that was going to be implemented in our country would have been in the best interest of the continuity and the sustainability of the local people first, and then everything else after. The Caymanian Protection Board and all those things were kind of like a glimpse or maybe some sort of platform we could have enhanced over the years to make it better. But instead of doing that, we stripped it away. We had a policy about LCCLs. We stripped that away, and now we went from 4 to 400. And a LCCL, ladies and gentlemen, just in case for those of you not very aware of that,
Right.
is when you don't need Caymanian participation in a company. That's basically what it is. Those are the high cut and dry terms. So if we have 400 times more LCCLs today, which means there's 400 times more activity from a business standpoint that doesn't have Cayman participation than it was in the 80s, then obviously we're going in the wrong direction. So again, it goes back to the point that we started to think about the repercussions we would have gotten if we decided to be a nationalist or a patriot of our own people, for lack of better terms, because most people will blow those things out of proportion. But at the end of the day, when you get on an airplane, the first thing they tell you to do is put on your mask first before you assist the child.
Right.
Because if you're not able to assist the child, then you both die.
Right.
So we must assist our own people first. We must ensure that they are embedded into the development fabric of this country, that they benefit from all aspects of it, while everybody else do too. But we must ensure that the mechanisms that we install within our framework and our legislation speaks very loudly about the involvement of our people, and we have to be non-apologetic about it. And that's where we've gone wrong, because we're trying to please everybody at the same time, while forgetting what the objective was to begin with, and that is to ensure that the Caymanian economy and the Caymanian people and the Caymanian environment also benefits.
So it's like I'm a mother, right? And I raise my children. I'm a single mom, 3 children by myself. So I invite some friends of my children's, right?
Hmm.
So three of my 3 children plus maybe 2 of their friends, and we have a pot of food, right? That's what I have to provide.
Nice.
And so it's nice that I invited 2 extra children there, but to ensure that those 2 extra children, they have their belly full,
Mm.
and my children have none, would make no sense.
No, it
But
wouldn't.
that's what I'm hearing, right? In a way. So if I'm going to invite 2 extra people into my house, I should be able to accommodate all 5 people. It should not be that my 3 children would go without and go to bed hungry because I'm trying to accommodate 2 extra people.
Well, yeah, in a sense, I agree, and that's kind of a scenario in which we could paint to highlight or illustrate what I was trying to say. What I'm saying, and what I will clarify is that we must understand that there's much to be given after much has been earned.
Right.
So it's hard for me to give what I don't have.
Well, I'm talking about one pot, right?
Right. So when we ask for persons to reciprocate the same sort of hospitality in which we've given, we've seen where we've been roadblocked. Where if you look at the 2009 draft reform constitution that was pioneered and forced down the throats of Caymanian people in an exit poll of the 2009 election by the PPM government. If you look into that document made sure that every other person that decided to come to the Cayman Islands rights and the things that they are benefiting from today was in place. But there was very little amendments or shaping of that constitution that ensured that the brand Cayman would have been printed on any of those legislations or any of those policies. I mean, we look at the referendum, which we'll talk about later on. When we look at Section 72 of the Constitution, how could you write in the ability for people to exercise their right to have a referendum? Hold on, and give them the right to utilize that section of the Constitution, but yet you wrote no law for it for 10 years until someone actually decided to call your bluff. So, but when someone says that you violated my human rights, oh, we have protesters and the marchers and everybody, and government goes into extraordinary meetings, and we even see where the governor exercises executive power to override the decision that was made within the halls of our parliament.
So it's contradictory in a
It's
sense.
extremely contradictory because
That means you can.
I'll say this because it's fresh in my mind after bringing that thread up. Think about this for a second, Catherine. Think about this. And please, ladies and gentlemen, set aside our moral beliefs about anything. Set aside, what any individual may think. But here it is. If we look at the history of the Cayman Islands, we are predominantly and historically a God-fearing country, right? Whether any one of us want to believe that or not.
Right.
And being God-fearing don't mean you're anti anything. It just means that you believe in something, okay?
Right.
And every member of Parliament, all 19 members, at some point went to church. I dare one of them to step forward today and tell me they didn't go to church as a kid, because they all did.
Right.
So they all understood the meaning of Christianity and God and all these different things. Okay? So when they were getting ready to vote on this most controversial piece of legislation, wouldn't it have been better if all of them had abstained to it and just didn't vote on it? Even if you didn't want to vote no, because you know why? The governor was going to exercise his executive powers anyway and write it into law. I would have rather history remember me for what I believe in, regardless if everybody think it's wrong. I would rather history remember me for standing up for what I was taught and believe in, as opposed to siding because it was the popularity vote of the day and abandoning all of the things that we were brought up on.
Because it seems deceitful.
Of course it does.
Right.
So
Yeah.
for me, I think that we have come a long way in our history where we preach one thing over here and our actions over here say something completely
And that's
different.
in so many different areas. That's not just in one area, right?
And we need to stop. We need to stop our politicians from using these platforms.
Well, here's what's interesting to me is, every time I have a discussion with you, it does not escape me that you are actually quite close with both with the two major parties in this country.
I was.
You were actually affiliated and associated with them at some different times in your life, because I've been a part of that. That knowledge, and so it concerns me. I guess concern is the lack of a better word. It begs to question for me why your opportunities for discussion with either of these groups is proves futile or non-existent. That to me is the biggest question, because obviously you are associated with them. Obviously, you're very passionate. You care about your country. You know a lot of stuff. You're talking about. You're not talking off the top of your head. Off the top of your head. So why is it that there are not these opportunities to welcome these discussions to that's going to benefit the better good?
Well, I can tell you that very, very clearly. Neither of the parties want to have anyone within their organization that is going to change the mindset or expose the underbelly of their interworkings. And the reason why we use the term was, which is past tense,
right,
is because if I was still affiliated, then I would be guilty. Right? So I'm glad that you said that, because the moment I found out that they were not in the best interest of the entire continuity of Caymanians, then it was my time to exit and make sure that we do our very best to do my very best as an individual to try to hold them accountable when they are making decisions that's going to affect the Caymanian way of life, the Caymanian continuity, and the sustainability of the Caymanian people. Now, many people may have a different opinion based on who I am as a person, but I challenge any one of those persons who choose to discredit what I say to bring anything that's contrary to what I've said.
Well, what I'm thinking right away is that by kind of being not associated or not affiliated with them anymore, it almost feels as if your effectiveness is being challenged, because you can't really get things done if everybody is going to be in the way and say, oh, don't listen, to try to discredit you in some way. So it's almost like oh, that person's just always beating a drum and it's just hot air and it's just clogging up the airwaves, and it's don't listen to that.
Right.
Do you see what I mean? Like,
no, I agree.
Effectiveness for me is very important.
Agreed.
Effective makes sense to me, because come on,
I think that's where
that's where work will be done.
Correct,
right?
And that's where the term perseverance and determination and optimism all play a very key, important role in the outcome of anything. When we look at someone celebrating a 50-year anniversary,
right,
being married or being together or whatever, they don't highlight the ups and downs, the issues, the things that they encountered getting to that 50 years. You're only celebrating that you manage to deal with all of the issues and make sure that at the end of the day you come out on the other side better than when you went in.
You're still intact.
So that's where I think we've kind of gone off track when it comes to politics and parties, because now we have the best of the two worst. We have the worst of the two best parties in the last 15 years. and credit card and all these different things. Alden McLaughlin was calling for a no confidence vote for him to step down as premier until his case was heard and finalized. Now we see something contrary to that, something totally different, because now it serves Alden McLaughlin's best interest politically to not agree to a no confidence motion because it serves him. When it served him to remove McKeever as premier when he wasn't a part of the unity government, he wanted McKeever to step down so his government could take over. Now that McKeever's in a very peculiar situation where he's been convicted, but yet you're still not calling a no confidence motion. Now we could argue whether no confidence makes sense or whatever, all we want. But it's a clear demonstration by Alden McLaughlin of his inconsistencies in what he thinks the Cayman Islands need or what's best for us, not realizing at the same token when anybody with half a brain could see that this is all about his political sovereignty. When it was in his best interest to become premier and take over McKeever, he wanted him removed. Now that it's in his best interest to keep McKeever in the same place so that he can continue to be the premier, he makes the move. These are the things that are happening right before our very eyes. The writing is on the wall. So he can get up and talk about integrity. He can talk about embarrassment. He can talk about being ashamed to be a Caymanian. And what they don't talk about is the same people that they've shared a podium with for the last 9.5 to 10 months at the press conferences. The same person they shared the podium with has been compromised overseas, has been brought up on charges, and now today a judgment just came out from the court ruling against Dr. Lee, but yet he got an OBE requested by the governor himself. So where Alden's big worldly speech about being embarrassed to share a podium with the likes of Dr. Lee, but yet we never hear that because it wasn't a Caymanian. If I was the chief medical officer, Alden would have been the first person to issue a press release to distance himself from me.
Yeah.
But anyway, again, these are the things we live with.
Well, I can tell you what. I mean, just sitting here across from you, just hearing you talk, and the discussions I've had with you in the past, I just wonder, just where you're from at the end of the day, because the problem with Caymanians is that we are not very much inclined to speak our minds as you do. So I think that I just respect the fact that you do speak your mind, and whether or not it's true, or whether I agree or disagree, because at the end of the day it's not about whether I'm agreeing or disagreeing or facilitating a conversation. I still have a lot of respect for the fact that you are speaking it, you're speaking what's in your mind, and you're not afraid to stand up for something. And I love that. We're going to take a break and we will come back. Please stay with us. This is Straight Talk, your Drive at 5 show. You can call us 943-3700. It is hot. We're talking hot topics. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. And welcome back to Straight Talk. This is your 5 at 5 show. Catherine Tyson, your host. And today is Tuesday. It is Hot Topics. We are talking with Mario Rankin, and we are talking some hot topics this afternoon. We actually, before the break, we were just talking about, just being able to speak your mind, and I'm all for that. In this little small place that we're from, so many people are so afraid to speak their mind, and it's not like if the reason there is not real reasons for not doing that or for doing that because people have been affected when they do speak their mind, and they've been affected financially, been affected socially. So it is, it is a very much, I feel like a scare culture, and I don't like it, a culture of fear. I think that that's something that we need to be moving towards getting away from because we're in the time of our life right now where everything goes. Social media is just like a flood of whatever. Every single person can be a star. Every single person's voice can be important. Every single person can do whatever they want to do. Yet we're in a place where you're afraid to say something because you might get fired, or you might not get hired, or
Virtualization.
you'll be unemployed for for 4 years, 5 years, and it's insane because it happens. So you got thousands of people that are civil servants that can't speak yet they're have to vote. It's really insane. So I think that I really do appreciate the fact that there's no fear in your eyes, and so I think that's pretty cool. We had a question come in.
Filed impeachment knowing very well that they were going to lose it. So I think that the motion of he filed no confidence on one of his colleagues, and then caused issues within the House, and then we have our election will jeopardize his political sovereignty is a thing the Caymanian people face, and in democracy face as well.
Okay. Now we talked about democracy. That was the first thing that you started talking about democracy. What is democracy? What is the definition of democracy to you?
First of all, I believe that Socrates said it best that we need to have educated democracy. Otherwise, we need to have can the shop in the country. But my definition of democracy is when we have an equal opportunity to participate in electing individuals who are going to legislate and enforce and manage and safeguard the policies that drive sustainable environment for people. So for me, I believe that our current government, is talking out of both sides of their mouth. Because if the mayor he's not interested in what is representative proper leadership in our country, he's only interested in ensuring that he continue to be the premier until the end of his term. So that in itself tells us how self-serving he is as an individual, because he said it with his own words. And I think that in his party meeting a couple of nights ago, where there's a couple of videos that leaked out of him speaking, it was almost comical for him to say, "Oh, we need to continue to get across this river. We're halfway there, and support this government. I want to be a minister to help Roy McTaggart, who will be the then premier, who's not capable of being the premier of this country, by the way." But again, we got Roy McTaggart to get to the podium and say, "Well, I agree with the premier." How you gonna be a leader when you're the greatest follower? I mean, come on, listen, man. We got young, vibrant, educated, creative minds in our country. Let's collectively get together. Let's change narratives. Let's change the whole conversation. Let's send a clear message to people guards that the way of politics that got us where we are cannot be the same style of politics that take us where we need to be.
So am I hearing new blood? New blood? Is that what you're talking about?
Remember, change isn't always necessarily good, but change is always necessary.
Maybe we should be playing the Sam Cooke song. The change is gonna come.
Or Take Me to the River?
Yeah, take more. Oh no.
I don't know. I think the thing is, Catherine, is that we need to stop having low confidence in our people simply because of their name, who they are, their color, who their family members are, what side of the road they're from. We have marginalized our own people for far too long because we have systematically categorized them as a certain type of people based on color, language, accent, and family and last name. We need to get rid of that. We need to get rid of that, because when I go to the supermarket, I don't see a sign saying rankings only today, except for COVID, obviously.
Right. And it's not this lane for this one, this lane for that one, and this lane for the people from this place. And
Right.
Exactly. No, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And it's almost like this a little click, and I think for one, people need to start being bought. That's for sure. Like you're important, and one I was hopeful, in giving me something in my life. All of the kind of the doors that I can walk through, that I can do what I want to do to live the life that I want to live, not what you're handing me, what you're giving me, and that means that I can do that particular thing. I want to be able to do whatever it is that I want to do, and so I can't do that if you're limiting what you're giving me, right? And so when we talk about the tourism, even the tourism is kind of stimulus. Yeah, great. All right, appreciate that. But what about other things? What about the businesses that were closed down? Like, what about other people? There are other people in the community that have suffered, not just because of tourism per se, but because of COVID, period, right? Because of lockdown, because of the pandemic. And so going to of people are receiving so much unemployment. They were talking about people were getting unemployment, that they were making more money off unemployment that they were making on their jobs. So some people didn't even want to go back to work, right? But I just feel like we have to be very careful how we're justifying the things that we're doing, and not be careful how we're justifying, not right.
And are we taking any necessary measures to ensure that and when well, let me change that but if when we are back open and we're in full swing of things, that we are able to manage the debt that we would have incurred over this time. So we need to take a grander look at how many of those people, and we have to be very careful when we say eligible, because you're here. Obviously, we never know when someone starts death. That's not the nature of Cayman people, obviously. But at the end of the day, there's some hard decisions that need to be made. We must understand that if there is a section of our society that are from a jurisdiction where the country has been collecting taxes for 100 years to ensure that they can take care of their people, that we need to have some sort of balance and some sort of understanding. And say, hey, look, we need to start now ensuring that we are tight belt here. Second wave and the order continue that we use stimuluses should be directly and priority going into the homes of Cayman families. And I say that with no fear, contradiction. You can hate it, whatever you want. I am concerned about the Caymanian people first. And yes, we have to take care all of the other issues that we have around, and we are willing to do so. Reach and say, look, it's not that we want you to have to do this, but it's something that you might have to do until we can get ourselves in a manageable position. $27 million a month was the last note. Okay, so we can't.
Well, what's interesting when you say Caymanian homes, are we taking into consideration Caymanian homes? If a Caymanian is married to somebody from somewhere else, like what are we talking about? Are we talking about people that are Caymanian paper? Like, what are we talking about? Caymanian across the board.
We've created an immigration policy that allows people to become Caymanians. Okay. Exactly, across the board. So yes, when my children is here, that's what I'm saying. What I was trying to say and be very diplomatic about it was saying, look, there are a lot of people who are in permit that work in the tourism sector getting stimulus,
right?
But yet their country has mechanisms in place to take care of them during these times,
right?
And we need to be very, very careful how we willingly go down this path, because the moment they become used to it, right, and you try to turn it off, is when it creates an issue.
Right. And I also know that you cannot create a culture of welfare either. You can't. When you create that, that's a big problem. Because, like you said, you get people used to something and then you take it away.
Then they expect it.
And that has been the problem too. If we look at Cayman 20 years ago, how much was our work permits earning us per year, right? Versus now. So when you start getting used to something, it is hard to take that away. And so we have to be very careful.
That's the reason why we set static growth in work permits.
Absolutely, because
it depends on that revenue.
It's huge revenue. When it was 50% of what it was a lot easier to walk away from it, or 25%. So with growth, we're going to have to recognize that these things will change, and that's why we have to be careful every step of the way, every decision that we make.
Diversification.
Absolutely.
Is what needs to take place.
So right now it's a couple of, we got 15 minutes. You want to talk about the referendums?
Well, I would like to, because I would like to talk about the referendum. I would like to remind the general public that, even though the tourism sector is closed down for now, we won't reopen, which will a government to have this referendum on election day, which would minimize the cost of having on a separate day. So I think that the same motivation that this now PPM government had in 2009 when it was forcing the reform constitution is that they should have now to ensure that the persons in this island who are legally registered to vote, who have demonstrated their right to be a part of a process, be afforded the opportunity to vote on this project, so that in the future no other politician or party or coalition can get around a round table and listen to a proposed document excluding the general public. We followed all of the made up requirements as we went along because they never had any and so all of the obstacles that Alden and his administration we overcame it. It is now legitimized through the cabinet office and election office. There's no reason for the government not to have them. You may be the government now, but you will not. So that's one thing that's guaranteed to change. That's one thing that's guaranteed to change.
There's never, there can't be that anyway. And you know in 4 years, things will change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why this referendum is absolutely essential to the election process. It is just as important as the election because it gives the Caymanian voting public an opportunity to participate and have a seat at the table on making the decision on a capital works project and the largest one, mind you, in the history of this country. And we need to make sure that that is followed through. The integrity of the Constitution is intact, and that the government do the right thing. It might not be popular for him. It might not be what he wanted. And against what he has some sort of and ensure that this referendum is high. You have a whole newfound respect.
Yeah. Do you feel it's some kind of
2008, when the PPM-led government, Alden McLaughlin was the Minister of Education. He was warned by multiple consultants that the world was going into a global recession. He said, quote unquote, only God could stop him from building those schools. And now we saw the result of that. He spent this country under the ground. We took $50 million from education budget to build a bypass with one lane. That particular government single-handedly forced this country down the framework for fiscal responsibility avenue from the FCO. So if I have to look at the track record of Alden McLaughlin, I hang that and this cruise port on his shoulder because these are the things that he pioneered.
But I hear what you're saying, but then, so on the other side, why do you think that that the party continues to have the confidence of the people then?
Well, I think he's extremely misguided. I don't think he's in touch with the realities of the current situation in the Cayman Islands. I believe that arrogance plays a heavy role in the outcome of his ability to articulate anything. I hate to have this in-depth conversation about him. However, he's at the wheelhouse.
So my question is not about him right now, but my question is about why do people continue if it's as clear as you can see that you.
But not everybody has that understanding of it. Not everybody has the time to go out and gather that information. That's why these platforms are absolutely essential to the process because it helps create awareness and education as to what's really happening in the country.
Yeah.
Not everybody has the time that I have, and I can tell you, I don't sleep. I use my non-sleeping time to read, and not everything I comprehend. Sometimes I got to read something 10 times before I click.
Right.
But I take the time out to do so. So I'm not professing to be anything other than someone who's chosen to be aware of the surroundings in my country and the things and the persons who create policies that affect my continuity
Right.
and the continuity of other human.
Yeah, and you're very learned in that area, in those areas, and I mean, I actually admire that. But what I want to ensure, I think, is that, like you said, people who don't know something, that it's clear to them, right? Because obviously there's two sides to stories, and then there's the right, so the third side, which is the right side, or right in the middle. But I think my biggest thing is that anything can be spun and dressed up and packaged and presented, right? And so I'm always the one to say, what do you think it should be versus what it is? Because what it
Mhm.
is packaged and presented, and when people don't understand, then we continue to just go for it, or we continue to believe it. So
Right.
it's, it, I don't like the whole talking where you understand it, but then no one else understands it. It
Yeah.
has to be where it's clear.
Exactly. And I think that more opportunities to have dialogue and platforms like this, to have the open debates and conversation, creates that level of awareness. Not everybody listens to the radio, not everybody has Facebook, not everybody has social media.
Right.
That's why I think that when you are elected official, that you have a transparency mechanism within your built into your portfolio or into your manifesto, so you can have that level of transparency where you can have conversations with people. And I think that there's a lot of misconceptions amongst a lot of people, especially when it comes to persons who choose to speak out publicly. I had a short conversation. Well, I wouldn't say short. I had a conversation with Wayne Pannon a couple of days ago, and one of his questions to me is how do I feel about global warming? And I know the reason why he asked the question, but the problem is that he never had a clue of how informed I was about that particular industry. He just know that at one point I wanted to bring an oil refinery to Cayman, so therefore he felt like I was aiding and abetting the current situation that caused global warming. So he asked me the question, waiting for me to trip up. Problem with it is that what he don't understand is that 13% of all greenhouse gases come from combustion engines, and the rest would come from the appetite of human beings for agricultural farming. But again, that's not for me and him to have a discussion. It just goes to show you that he had misconceived who I was as a person.
Well, they didn't realize you don't sleep.
Right? And if he had taken the time to read the project that I was proposing, it was 100% environmentally friendly. It ran a greenhouse gas that was going to grow hydroponic strawberries, and it would have been 100% emission free. Oh, and by the way, we wouldn't have had to bring in the fossil fuel that is being generated in these environmentally unfriendly factories. But
Okay.
again, because no one chose to read the framework and the outline of that business case, they just heard the word refinery, and then they just associated that with not being someone who is environmentally conscious.
Right.
However, we need to understand that we need to stop assuming, right?
Right.
Because assumptions are the genesis of all screw ups. And we've seen where we've seen more apologies than awards. And this is where we need to move away from. So we have a small country, we have a small population. We shouldn't need charities to feed our children. Okay?
Right.
We shouldn't need NAU to have a line around the corner.
Right.
These are the small fundamental things that we can easily fix. And I don't want to hear no politician tell me that it's more complex than that. It is very, very, very simple. The institutions that are economically successful in this country,
Right.
right, are only successful based on the mechanisms that allow them to be. Now, we're looking at tourism. There's nothing we can do about the pandemic and the global shutdown. We didn't make that decision. But if this country had diversified and had other avenues of generating GDP, it would have been less of an impact than we're feeling now. And we haven't really felt the true impact of this. You wait until that false sense of security of the pension holiday starts to dwindle away. I heard that there's a second wave of the pension holiday, and I'm assuming that it might be politically timed so that they can win the confidence of the unsuspecting voters who don't have the time to do the research, to become aware of their surroundings. And those are the people that will be, unfortunately, tricked into going to the polls and re-electing the Turkey politicians.
Right. I tell you what, that is something. You are listening to Straight Talk. This is your Drive at Five show, and this is hot topics. I'll tell you, it is something else, and it's just food for thought, really. Thank you so much for tuning in this afternoon. We have a few minutes left, Mario.
Mhm.
Can you tell us this referendum, the whole court thing? Some people are very torn. They're confused. They don't know. Is it good for us? Is it not good for us? Why are we fighting it? What isn't it going to be something that provides jobs? But tell us what is your stance on that?
Well, because we got 2.5 minutes, let me give you a 2 minute version of a 6 hour interpretation. Here's the thing: 80% of all revenue that's generated from tourism come from stay over tourism, ladies and gentlemen. The other 20% come from cruise tourism. Who creates the biggest negative impact of environment? The 20%, not the 80%. So if we're going to build a cruise berthing facility in the middle of Georgetown to accommodate more cruise passengers and create more strain on our infrastructure, the cost of infrastructure build out and infrastructure maintenance is for the local government, and the revenue generated will become offset or less than, and we might have to subsidize it. So yes, we need cruise tourism, and yes, we need stay over tourism, but there have to be a perfect balance where 2 minute cruise tourism does not affect the overall quality that affect the stay over tourism. Who is the breadwinner? 80%.
And that's your last word on the subject.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Mario, for coming out. We open the airwaves for anybody to come out and have a conversation. If you want to come and have a conversation about your side, please reach out to us. Straight talk. That's what we're doing here. Straight talk. Okay, it's to drive at five. We catch the people in their cars. They're driving home. People need to know. People want to know. And I, for one, am just happy when people are confident and just brave enough to just let their voices be heard. Our voices are all important. Make sure that you're letting your voices be heard. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. This was your Straight Talk Private Five show. This is Catherine Tyson, your host. I'll catch you tomorrow, Wednesday. It'll be Wellness Wednesday. I'm going to be in here talking some good stuff. Have a great afternoon. Take care of yourselves.
Someone said, shorty face got me at the moon.